So we went into Iraq, and that's how we ended the last lecture, based on if you're seeing things from the Bush doctrine, the Bush side of things, the neocon position is that we had to take action, that we had to take action in order to prevent another attack. And that was built on the idea that they said Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction and he was working with Al-Qaeda. And then it was only a moment of time before Dick Cheney said, the mushroom cloud would be the proof. So this put an enormous pressure on, Americans, kind of a fear thing, that we had to do something. And the problem that I believe Democrats have, and Americans who disagree with the Bush administration, is they have failed to see the evidence for what they said. They have not found weapons of mass destruction. Some Americans believe they're still out there or they destroyed them, but they were never found. And there were different parts of the story that didn't pan out the way that we were told. We were told that we would be greeted as liberators. And after we attacked, and look, it's like Vietnam, we could kick butt all over the world. And we kicked butt, it was called shock and awe. And we completely blew them up. And it wasn't a matter of getting into Baghdad. The problem is that we thought we would be greeted as liberators, and quite quickly we were viewed as the enemy. And by people that we had, in our eyes, just given to freedom to. So back to the root problem of Iraq is that its perspective is that I'm not arguing that Americans are bad or that soldiers are there for bad reasons. You can have a soldier who loves his country and in his mind is bringing freedom to the children of Iraq, and that can be completely truthful. But from the Iraqi perspective, they are seeing it as, and maybe they've been told this by their own press or religious groups or leaders, that this is the enemy, that they're going to control you, that they want to take away your Islam or take away your country or control your oil or whatever it is. And that's just a matter of fact, that people don't like other people coming in their country and helping them or running them. And you get, guerrilla warfare, you get a fight back. And especially the Sunnis. You can't talk too much about this, but there's two big ethnic groups in Iraq. There's actually three, the Kurds, but we're not going to talk about them in the north. The Sunnis and the Shiites. And the Sunnis were the minority of the population, yet Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. So that small chunk of Sunnis controlled, maybe 20%, controlled the other 60% of Shiites. And there's another 15-20% of Kurds. And when Saddam Hussein was thrown out of power, one of the mistakes the United States might have made was they said, look, if you were a Sunni, if you were part of Saddam Hussein's arsenal or party, you can't be part of this new government. And look, he's a dictator, he's a bad man, but not everybody who works for him is bad. There's a lot of, I'm sure, college graduates and bureaucrats and pencil pushers and people that want to be part of government and have a living and a pension and a way of life that, aren't evil. So some of that might have turned against the United States in the form of a counter-rebellion and roadside bombs and attacking from behind and, sabotage, and really have cost the United States almost 4,000 lives, and we're still kind of in Iraq. Think of it as Iraqification, that we're trying to pull out, like Vietnamization, Vietnam, 10 minutes, right? But we're training the Iraqis as we leave. So that's one situation. The other situation, and I'm looking for my watch, the other situation has to do with Afghanistan. Directly after 9/11, George Bush, was a powerful leader standing on the rubble in New York City and proclaiming that, the rest of the world would hear us, that we would catch these guys, that America meant business. And he believed that with all his heart, and 90% of Americans supported George Bush at that moment. 90%. It was bipartisan, meaning two parties, both parties, supported their president. And there was very little opposition to going into Afghanistan. After all, in our eyes, this is where the terrorists were allowed to train. And we said to Afghanistan, the Taliban, remember them, who they had visited the United States. I'm not going to lie, I know that they did. They, were invited to Texas, and they met with oil representatives, and this is where conspiratorial stuff starts. And I'm not saying that any of that's true, but There are connections between the Taliban and oil and pipelines, and I can't get into that though because it's crazy talk. But nevertheless, the truth of the matter is that following 9/11, we gave the Taliban a chance. We said, turn over bin Laden. He's the mastermind of Al-Qaeda. They planned this and they protected him. So we basically bombed Afghanistan back to the Middle Ages. And in that period, they got me doing it, Saddam bin Laden. Bin Laden escaped into the mountains in Tora Bora and got out. And the United States possibly didn't give enough troops to Afghanistan to get, bin Laden. In retrospect, we sent, 10 times, that's not a mathematical number, to Iraq, and that wasn't connected. So many Americans feel disappointed that we didn't do that same thing with Afghanistan. But nevertheless, we're still in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is now officially the longest American war. I saw that in the paper today. We've been there since 2001. So 2001, 2002. So we've been there for 8 years. Remember, World War II only lasted 1941 for the United States to 45. The Civil War, 1860 to 1861 to 1865. World War I, like 1916, 17, 1918. So this is an 8-year war. And Obama has promised that, we're going to get out of Afghanistan. Now the problem is, and I don't have much time, is that let's say that you punch, a glass pane and your hand goes through the glass and you shouldn't leave your hand there. The flies are attacking it or something bad's happening. But you know that if you take your hand out too quickly, what's going to happen, right? You're going to cause more damage. And that possibly, if there's not a strong government there, the Taliban quickly could take over and we could find more terrorist training camps. That's not the end of the argument. Some people say that and they go, well, there, see? But nevertheless, the situation we're in now is we're trying to get out of Afghanistan. Maybe you can call it Afghanistification, Vietnamization, Iraqification, Afghanistification, where you try to get out and support your friendly allies within the country, whether it's Karzai in Afghanistan or the leader of Iraq. Oh man, that sucks that I don't know his name right off the bat. Boy, I think I almost want to Google it and go get it. It's really late and I'm tired. But nevertheless, major concepts. Domestically, we have issues on the test. You might see the Patriot Act, which is basically an expansion of government power in the wiretapping business in order to catch the bad guys, the terrorists. There's a denial of habeas corpus, not only for prisoners of war who aren't prisoners of war, terrorists picked up on the battlefield, who we see as terrorists, and I don't know, I'm sure they are, they say they are, I don't know if they're not, because their habeas corpus was stripped. They were sent to Guantanamo Bay, which is part of Cuba, but the United States occupies that from the Spanish-American War Treaty, and basically it's a black hole where terrorists were sent there, and maybe some innocent people, without, really any habeas corpus, lawyer rights, trial rights, basically held under military occupation, I guess you want to say. But at the same time, they weren't given Geneva protection. Remember Geneva Conventions from the end of World War II? The treaty that says this is how you treat people that you fight. You can't torture, you can't humiliate, yada, yada, yada. We've crossed that line in some Americans' eyes. And I know the argument, let's give the other side, that there could be a ticking bomb and that you need to torture sometimes, waterboard, in order to get the information. The other side would say it doesn't work. People will lie and say anything. But either way, that's been one issue that's been brought up. Another one is Abu Ghraib. Those pictures, if you haven't seen them, and I want you to Google them, but there's awful photos that American soldiers, did some not good things. Tortured people, I want to say. Took humiliating naked photographs of them and shared them on their flips. But we're out of time, guys. That caused a lot of problems because people turned against the United States. 9/11's a big event. Please try to wrap your head around it, guys. All right?